Greetings. To progress our narrative, we now delve into Chapter 4. The following morning at 11:50, Lauren found herself fortunate enough to locate a parking space directly across from Cinco's offices, precisely in front of the Global Industries building. With a mixture of both apprehension and excitement, she exited her car. She smoothed her slim beige skirt, adjusted her short matching military jacket, and crossed the street, heading toward Mr. Weatherby's office. Although Mr. Weatherby greeted her with a formal, almost ingratiating smile, his annoyance was quite evident. Miss Danner, he said as he ushered her into his office, "You could have saved yourself, me, and several others a significant amount of time and trouble if you had simply informed me yesterday that you're a friend of Mr. Sinclair's." Curiously, Lauren asked, "Did Mr. Sinclair contact you, let you know that I'm his friend?" "No," Mr. Weatherby replied, his irritation barely concealed. "Mr. Sinclair contacted our company's president, Mr. Sampson. This led to a chain reaction involving several executives, culminating in my boss informing me last night that I had offended and misjudged you. He mentioned that you're highly intelligent and a personal friend of Mr. Sinclair's." Then he hung up. Lauren was taken aback by the extent of the reaction she had provoked. "I apologize for causing so much trouble," she said contritely. "It's not entirely your fault. I did fail my tests." He agreed emphatically. "I did tell my boss that you seemed utterly clueless, but he didn't care whether you could write with a pencil or your toes." Rising from his chair, he added, "Now, if you'd follow me, I'll take you to Mr. Williams's office. He's the executive vice president, and his secretary is leaving for California. He wants to interview you for the position." Lauren started uneasily. "Is Mr. Williams the executive vice president who contacted?" "Exactly," Mr. Weatherby interrupted. Lauren accompanied him, feeling unsettled by the idea that Mr. Williams might offer her the job due to intimidation from his superior, despite any personal dislike he might harbor for her. A few moments later, any such thoughts dissipated. James Williams, in his mid-30s, projected an air of authority as he looked up from his papers upon Lauren's entrance. He nodded briefly toward a leather chair positioned before his expansive desk. "Have a seat," he instructed Lauren. Turning to Mr. Weatherby, he ordered, "Close the door on your way out." As instructed, Lauren took a seat and watched as Jim Williams rose from his desk and moved around it, leaning against it with his arms crossed over his chest, his gaze fixed on her. He addressed her dispassionately. "So you're Lauren Danner?" Lauren sighed, admitting, "Yes, that's me." Amusement softened his business-like demeanor momentarily. "I gather from that comment that you're aware of the commotion you caused last night." Lauren nodded ruefully. "Yes, in agonizing detail." "Can you spell excruciating?" Surprised, she responded, "Yes, I can." "Your typing speed, outside of test conditions, approximately 100 words per minute?" Understand? "Yes." Without averting his gaze, he reached for a pencil and pad on his desk. Handing them to Lauren, he instructed, "Take this down, please." Lauren, surprised but focused, began to transcribe as he dictated swiftly. "Dear Miss Danner, in your role as my administrative assistant, you will be tasked with various secretarial responsibilities and will serve as my primary liaison with my staff. It is expected that you will consistently adhere to company policies, regardless of your connection with Nick Sinclair. Our move to the global building is imminent, and should you attempt to exploit your association with Mr. Sinclair, whether through negligence in your duties or disregarding established rules, I will terminate your employment immediately and personally escort you out. Conversely, if you display initiative and interest, I will delegate increased responsibility based on your capability and willingness. If you find this agreeable, report to my office for work at 9:00 a.m. 2 weeks from Monday." "Any inquiries, Lauren?" With dazed eyes, Lauren looked up at him. "Does this mean I have the job?" "That depends on whether you can transcribe that memo with accuracy in a reasonable time frame." Lauren was surprised by the offer, coolly delivered yet full of potential. Overwhelmed, she returned to the typewriter and then approached his office minutes later, memo in hand. "Here's the memo. Mr. Williams." Glancing briefly at it, he turned his attention back to her. "Efficient. How did Weatherby come to believe you were a scatterbrain?" "That was the impression I gave him," Lauren responded obliquely. "Any inclination to share how that happened?" Lauren hesitated. Not particularly. It was a misunderstanding. Understood. Now, is there anything else we should discuss? Yes, your salary. Although the salary he proposed was $2,000 lower than Philip's offer, she remembered Philip's promise to compensate the difference. Do you want the job? Yes and no. Lauren answered with a faint smile. I am interested in working for you, as I believe I could learn significantly. However, I don't wish to accept the job if it's solely due to Nick Sinclair. Lauren nodded. Nick's involvement doesn't factor into this decision. I've known him for years, and while we're friends, friendship doesn't influence business choices. Nick and I each have our own roles. I don't advise him in his job, and I expect the same respect regarding mine. So why did I decide to interview you today, even after your test performance? His smile hinted at an inside joke. Actually, my previous secretary, whom I hold in high regard, clashed with Weatherby right from the start. When I heard about an intelligent young applicant who didn't get along with him, I wondered if you might be another version of her. You're not. But I anticipate a productive working relationship with you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I will see you in 2 weeks. Call me Jim. With a handshake, Lauren returned his smile. Then feel free to call me Lauren. I believe I already have. Laughter danced in her eyes. Yes, you have. Amused, he concluded. Good. Don't let me intimidate you. As Lauren stepped into the bright sunlight, leaving the building's dim interior, she couldn't help but glance across at the Global Industries building. Would Nick be there working? She longed for another encounter. Crossing the street to her car, Lauren pondered whether Nick's lack of request for her phone number indicated disinterest. She mused that he couldn't be shy given his confident demeanor. As she reached for the car door handle, the glass doors of the building swung open and there was Nick himself, striding into view. Her heart soared momentarily, and she even thought he might approach her, but he turned in a different direction, heading away from her. Nick, Lauren impulsively called out. Nick! He glanced back, and Lauren waved, thrilled when he changed his course, and approached her with those characteristic strides. Guess what I've been up to? She beamed. His gray eyes twinkled with teasing warmth as they swept over her polished appearance, modeling for a Bonwit Teller fashion show. Pleased by the compliment, Lauren maintained her composure. No, I've just been across the street at Cinco Electronics. They offered me a job, thanks to you. Honoring his contribution, he asked, did you accept? Absolutely. The salary is impressive, and the man I'll be working for seems terrific. The role itself sounds intriguing and challenging. Happy with your decision, then? Lauren nodded, then hesitated, hoping he would propose a further encounter. Instead, he opened her car door for her. Nick, she ventured before her courage wavered. I'm in the mood to celebrate. If you know a nice place for lunch, I'll treat you. After a moment's suspense, a smile spread across his tanned features. That's the best offer I've had today. Instead of guiding her with directions, Nick took control of the car. A few blocks away, he turned off and parked behind a renovated 3-story brick house that bore the sign Tony's. Inside, the house had been transformed into an inviting restaurant with gleaming hardwood floors, copper pots on brick walls, and cozy stained glass windows. Red and white check tablecloths added to the charm. Seated at a table, they conversed as Lauren inquired about the restaurant. Nick's vague answers hinted at long-standing familial ties with the establishment's owner, Tony. Before long, a waiter welcomed Nick, and they ordered the special French dip sandwiches. As Lauren quizzically glanced at Nick, he explained that the restaurant was family connected, with his grandfather having assisted Tony in establishing it. Between bites of their meal, Lauren continued to question Nick, uncovering the depth of his connection with the restaurant. She discovered that Nick's family and Tony's had shared a strong friendship over generations. His father had even worked for Tony's father at one point, though the financial dynamics seemed to have reversed over time. As they finished eating, Tony emerged, patting Nick's shoulder and warmly greeting him. Tony's offer for dessert was met with Lauren's enthusiastic agreement. She felt both amazed and grateful as he introduced her to his family and his restaurant, promising support and guidance as she transitioned to Detroit. As their time at the restaurant drew to a close, Nick stepped away to make a phone call. Lauren's thoughts were consumed by this unexpected opportunity to connect with Nick in a more personal setting. While she was uncertain about the timing of his call, she couldn't shake the one word that reached her ears: Erica. Nick returned to the car, and they decided to test her car's condition by driving north. The idea of a weekend trip appealed to Lauren, and Nick's offer of a getaway was both exciting and intriguing. While the initial plan had been for Nick to bring someone along, she realized he might have made arrangements well before meeting her. As Nick maneuvered the car, Lauren asked him about his plans for the weekend. When he mentioned a party, the prospect of going with him thrilled her. Despite having intended to drive to her hometown, Lauren was open to new adventures. Nick confirmed that his friends were expecting him to bring someone, making her feel more comfortable about the invitation. With the promise of a weekend getaway and new experiences, Lauren's heart raced. She was ready to embark on this journey with Nick and discover what lay ahead. That concludes part 4. To stay updated on Chapter 5 and future developments, please consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell. Thank you. Bye for now.